Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This week's show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Watari-kun's It's About to Collapse, Season 1, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I don't remember if I talked about this last episode or whether this is something that's kind of popped in my head in between these episodes, so do forgive me if I'm reiterating myself from last episode, but looking at the title with like all the asterisks, basically that's only in like the English translated title. In the Japanese original title, it's 2 X's in it. And I was wondering if this is kind of a Holic situation, because if you're unfamiliar, there's a series by Clamp. They're an animation studio known for what was it? Card Capture Sakura and Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles are like 2 series I'm like best known for them. I know best from them, and Holic is one of the other ones, because I recently went down a Clamp rabbit hole for whatever reason. I don't remember what started that, but anyway, I'd completely forgotten, like, right, Holic's like is the first series I ever came across that referenced, like, oh yeah, in Japanese, when you have X's in something, it's supposed to be a placeholder for a blank. So in that series, because I've always was like, oh, the series is called XXX Holic. It's like, no, the series is just called Holic. It's just the X's represent a blank. Because like in that series, you deal with people who are addicts. Like an early on storyline, I believe, was like, I have not read the manga in so long. So do forgive me, my memory's crap. But like, I believe one of the early storylines is like, there's a girl who's a pathological liar. So she's a liar holic. Or, oh, you're addicted to gambling. So you're a gambling holic. That's part of like, some of the shtick of that series storytelling. So I was wondering, like, because initially when you look at the title, you're like, oh, it seems like it's just being cheeky to cover up, like, oh, you're censoring like something naughty. But I'm wondering if they're doing the same thing here, where it's like, oh, Watari's garden is about to collapse, or Watari's sanity is about to collapse. I'm wondering if it's something kind of like that to some degree, like it's meant to just be a blank. So that's what I was wondering. Like I said, because in the Japanese titling, it's 2 X's, but like it's a whole bunch of asterisks in like the English translation. I mean, it might be like a double meaning where you're supposed to think it's something naughty, but really it is meant to be a blank. That's why I just wanted to bring that up, because it feels like that's probably like I said, the kind of pun of the titling might be. I don't know. That's just what like immediately ran through my mind, so that's why I wanted to kind of reference that ahead of time. Like I said, I don't think I brought that up last episode, but I could be mistaken, so do forgive me if I like went down the same diatribe again. Either way, picking up immediately where last episode left off with Naoto on top of Satsuki, his aunt decides like, yo, get out. And hey, you got to give it to Suzuki to have some self-awareness to be like, yo, like, do you want me to talk to her? Like, it was my hit. And I think this speaks volumes that Naoto's like, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. You should probably get home before it gets dark. And he goes for a walk with Suzuki. He didn't put up much fight because he accepted it as is. Because sadly, in Naoto's brain, it's like, okay, the only family he can really reliably rely on is Suzu, but more so in the regards of we're kind of all we really have, because Suzuki finally gets it out of him, but it's like she knows about what happened to his parents, because she's like, why are you living with your aunt? And he's like, well, the fact of the matter is it's always been a bit of a hot potato situation with the rest of our relatives, because there's a lot of our relatives that never liked that our mom and dad got married, and that kind of put a strain on our relationship with the like extended family. So they've never had a really good relationship, so I guess that's why it's always been like passed once again at the hot potato of it all, which is so interesting. I think for the first time, like, I mean, the sad thing is, I think it's like I said, this I think is represented by this of like Naoto not putting up much of a fight. He's just kind of like, okay, he doesn't try to plead with his aunt or talk to her. He's just like, I'm just going to walk with Suzu, because he's like, all right, we're going to have to leave again, because he's always thinking in the back of his mind, this is only temporary. So that's why he's just kind of like, he was scared to get kicked out, but he's also like, all right, it's just the reality of it. Like, none of our relatives really want us. Like, all we have family wise is me and Suzu, so that's all I can really, like I said, count on. And it's actually Satsuki that's like, being like, hey, like, maybe your aunt doesn't dislike you like you think you do, like she does. Like, Tomeo, like, is allowing you use her garden. The gardens are a permanence type of thing, because it's like, right, it's something you're going to have to plant some seeds. You're going to have to, like, put down some roots essentially, and that's something Naoto like hasn't really, they haven't had that stability since their parents passed away. And so I think there's almost that part of him that's like, I don't want to get, because he's probably had his heart broken too many times where it's like, yo, I'm with this family, but like I'm with this relative, but then like the buck gets passed on to the next one, and just like you eventually kind of go like, I don't want to kind of get my hopes up for Suzu's sake. I don't want her getting her hopes up thinking that this is going to be this and that, so he's just kind of like, he's got his guard up in that regard, and this episode really kind of like dives heavily into that in a lot of ways, like his own like his warped way of kind of dealing with things, and his warped kind of pseudo sort of perspective, and how he's kind of handled being kind of like the only family his sister has, but also like kind of dealing with like his parents' death in his own way. I'll get to like explaining that a little bit more in depth in what I'm trying to get across, but Suzuki had given him like two sets of seeds to kind of plant, because she does feel responsible, because she's like, yeah, I'm trying to get back into your life, but I didn't know like I'd put you in such a compromising position, because she has some idea from the outside, but I don't think she has full knowledge of everything that's going on with Naoto and Suzu's family situation. So when he goes back to the house, he pleads with her. It's like, hey, like some of those seeds will take a while, some might even take like a full year, so it's like, please let me and Suzu stay here, I promise. And then she's kind of like, all right, so is that girl like your girlfriend? He's like, no, that's just a childhood friend. He's like, I don't really have any time to be worried about girls or girlfriends. Like, I've got to focus on taking care of Susan. She's like, all right, as long as you do that and kind of don't worry too much about girls. The fact is that's such an issue for her. That's why I was like, I wonder, was her brother, like Naoto and Suzu's dad, like was he a bit of a player or something? And she's always like held that against, because once again we don't know why the rest of the families, like once again sounds like on both sides, but maybe it was just on Naoto and Susie's dad side of the family, but I'd assume that also includes their mom side of the family. Of I wonder, is that who they've in, I mean, for them to end up at Tameo's place now, like that she isn't the first relative that they landed with, must mean that most of those relatives that kind of pushed them away, I'm curious, which side of the family are they from? Are they both sides of the family? Because you think it's like your dad's sister, like she'd be like first person that you would end up landing with, and the fact that she wasn't, I think is kind of interesting. There's a lot of deeper levels to that I think is fascinating when you kind of think about that. Because take like because I'd assume like most of the other people they landed with was their mom's side of the family, who wanted nothing to do with them. If anything, only for like just kind of like, we kind of have to for appearance sake. But then the moment we get the chance, we're passing the buck down. I'm legitimately curious, like what was the inciting thing to like make it so that it turned into such a hot potato thing? Like, did they legitimately like, we don't want you anymore, and gave you the boot, where they're extenuating circle? Like, what was the reason they kept passing the buck? And then how did it land at Tameo's like feet? And why wasn't it immediately? Like, that's why I'm like, did their mom have any siblings? Because it seems like, I mean, from what we know so far, their dad only has Tameo, but like, we don't know if they have any other siblings early in the story, so we don't know. But like, did they land at like, oh, like their mom's aunt or uncle or cousin, but maybe like their mom didn't have any actual siblings? So, but like I said, because of that, you would thought, but that also shows like they weren't that close to Tameo, once again, for them to land at her doorstep now and not initially, or at least early enough in the process. To be fair, they've been going for 2 years, so who knows how long they've really stayed at any place for any period of time. It's just all, we just know they've been shuffled around a lot. But either way, I think it's important to kind of like dive into that stuff, because I'm so curious about some of those minute details about that, and I'm curious to see if the story really gets into that. Once again, we're pretty early on, but I think those are going to be significant details, because they play into why Naoto's the way he is. I think it probably even plays into why Suzu's the way she is, why they both have this interesting, like, it's not the cis con thing that people were joking about in the first episode, or at least his friends and other people were joking about in the first episode. But I think it's more like this codependency that they have because all they have family-wise each other. Like through it all, it's like we're only ones together. Like after now that mom and dad are gone, we're the only like ties to each other. We're the only like direct family we have left, you know? And so it ends up being this interesting thing. Like after Tomeo is like, oh, you can stay here. They're working on the garden. There's a pretty bad test score from one of Suzu's like grades, and she's like, oh, I need you to be my tutor, would you like to do that? And he's like, all right, I can do that. But her brother's like, yeah, but you need to kind of grow up a little bit. She's like, never, 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 I'm always going to be with you forever. So you're seeing the codependency on that side. But later on, you know, he's always put his sister first, so it's like, okay, I don't want to I can't go study with Yukari. She offers to help, but I'm like, I'm not that smart. But she's like, no, it's okay, it's fine. But he's like, did she invite me because she wants to hang out? He's like, nah, that's just her being super nice. Which his buddy's like, yo, good luck with that. And he's like, good luck with what? It's like studying, trying to be cheeky, but it's like, you know, he's like, I told you before not to get your high hopes up, but he's like, no, I kind of see it. Like he recognizes like, no, Yukari likes you, and he sees that too later when Satsuki gives him the umbrella, and then Yukari was nearby and she kind of runs away because it's like she's worried there's something there, but she knows there isn't. But it's still like she hasn't like been able to be upfront about her feelings towards him. So he kind of has like the outside perspective. Well, once again, it's like obviously like Naoto likes Yukari, but he doesn't think like, oh, she's way out of my league. But then like that's where we kind of get into like the psychology of him, because when he goes home he's like, oh yeah, like Susie's not here yet, like I wonder what's taking her so long, like maybe like the rain kept her at school a little longer, okay, let me find the umbrella or her raincoat. But then he finds one of her test scores like crumpled up and hidden away. It's a perfect score of 100. So it's like, wait, she doesn't need me. So it's like, wait, she's lying to me about needing me. Because, yeah, maybe some subjects are weaker for her, but it's like her to hide that must mean like, yo, because she's making excuses so that I will dedicate more time to her. And he kind of uses that excuse to leave, and he's kind of like bummed about it because it turns out like, yo, one of her friends didn't have an umbrella, so she basically took him home and then came back. That's what took her so long to get back home. But then he's walking, and because he's kind of running away, like rather than confronting her directly, being like, good job for taking. But for him, it's like he's like made himself so codependent on her, because he even realizes like, I've always made it seem like Suzu's the one that needs to grow up, but he's like, no, I'm like, it's kind of like a symbiotic thing where like they both like codependently rely on each other, understandably, but to the degree like they clamp onto each other a little too much, where like he's being the overprotective brother because he says, no, my sister needs me, but it's also like I kind of need her more. I've used her as an excuse to not live my life. You know, I've kind of pushed people away because I'm like, maybe it's just to protect himself after everything that they've been through, whether it's losing their parents, being shuffled around. It's like, I need to protect Suzu, and I put all my energy into that. And it's kind of like, oh, she needs me. Yeah, she's been a little like, yo, I don't want you hanging around girls and stuff, because she wants to kind of like monopolize him. And he's kind of done the inverse, where like he puts all his effort into her so he doesn't have to kind of properly deal with his own life in a sort of way. He's able to kind of like focus on something that's not himself and kind of get outside of himself by just making all of his attention to Suzu. And he ends up running into Satsuki, who lied about having an umbrella. And it's like, of course she did. She said she had like a collapsible like spare one, but I'm like, of course she was lying about it. So he gives her the coat and takes her home. But he's like, wow, you live pretty close to us, and you live in a pretty rundown place. Which, you know, there's a whole conversation about like, she seems to know at least some, or relates to some aspects of Naoto's predicament and circumstances. But like, he's like, how could your parents let you live in a rundown place again? That's like, we don't know what her family situation is. Like, for her to be here, because she was even being cheeky early on, being like, oh. And I think I even suggested this last episode that she would be like, oh, you could live with me if you want to. But it's like, because she's living on her own, and it's like, I guess like that rundown place might be the only place she can afford, because we don't know if she gets any allowance from her family. Like maybe her parents died, and like maybe she's in a similar situation and she's just making ends meet with whatever money's left. or maybe her parents abandoned her or kicked her out. We don't know. Like there's something that went down that this all plays into why she destroyed the garden, why she reacted the way she did 6 years ago, why they disappeared. Like there's something there that we're just not privy to, that Naoto isn't privy to, and she's not quite ready to talk about it yet. But essentially, like, she was telling Naoto, like, you need to put your feelings first. It's okay to prioritize your feelings. Like, oh, you're worried about getting back to your sister, being home alone. But it's like, well, she's 10 years old. Like, she's old enough to be okay. I don't know if, like, I mean, that's a very, like, Japanese perspective. Because, I mean, I'm sure a lot of other countries, well, specific Asian countries, like, you have a lot more independence and you kind of have to grow up a little bit faster in those environments. I don't know if that's a full, like, USA sensibility or not, but I definitely know that is like a, you're a little more older, you can shoulder a little bit more responsibility. So once again, I'm not an indictment or anything like that. It's just like, I know, like, from a cultural standpoint, that is kind of like a perspective. But it's also like, you shouldn't, like, she's not a baby, she's not an infant, that you're like, she's not a little kid, she's still a kid, she's not a teenager yet, but she's at a decent enough age that it's okay. And it's like, you can prioritize your feelings, but he's like, you don't talk like like you understand what's going on between me and Suzu. And then when he leaves, she's like, I do though. And then she lays down and she's like, Naoto, she's like, I've been with you these past 6 years. So it's like, has she secretly been following them ever since, like, on her own? And you don't think it's going to be something crazy like, oh, she had, like, a large amount of an inheritance and she's burned through it, always following, like, from the shadows, from Naoto and Suzu. Maybe not. I'm probably reading way too much into that, but I'm curious. But then there's also the element of, does she mean that figuratively, of just, like, literally but figuratively, in the regards of, I've always stayed with you, like, you've always been my focus in these past 6 years, you've never left my mind, type of thing. So it's like, I get, like, the whole dynamic you have with Suzu, like, I kind of have a similar dynamic with you. I don't know. Something I forgot to bring up earlier in relation with Tamayo was the whole conversation about, like, the garden, that, like, I think Naoto was like, oh yeah, like, isn't the garden thing, he was like, it was something our dad actually got from your family was doing a garden, and that's kind of what inspired our dad to be like, oh, like, let me do that for my own family, and it's regard. But then immediately Tomeo shut that down. It's like, don't ever talk about my brother. I'm like, and even he's like, yo, what went down? Like, why does she hate our dad? Like, why does she hate our brother so much? Like, once again, I'm so fascinated behind, like, what those reasons are, and whether or not that has any correlation, or it feels like it has to correlate with why she's so like, yo, I don't want you around women, like, or like worrying about girls. Like, it feels like that's her projecting her brother issues onto him, like, whatever issues, like, her perceived issues of her brother when it came to women, and maybe that's what that's about, and maybe that also ties into why the families had issues with their parents getting together. Either way, when he does get back home, though, he confronts Suzu about, like, yo, can I go hang out with Yukari? And she's like, but no, you promised that you'd be my, like, you're lying, you're going back on your word. He's like, yeah, but I found this test. And she freaks out because she's like, crap, I wasn't expecting you to find it. She balls it up again and tosses it. And she was like, that was a fib, that was a fluke, I don't know what. He's like, yeah, but you might not be great in other subjects, but you can handle it on your own. It's okay to kind of grow up. And he passes out because he has a fever. So, I think it's kind of interesting. Like, she went to go get Tomeo. We didn't see what Tomeo actually did, other than, like, yo, help probably take him to his room and stuff. But, I think it's interesting. We don't see her there, like, looking over him. Like, once again, maybe this also ties into why she's always just in her room. Like, maybe she's the siscon. Like, maybe that might be the twist to it. And like I said, that's why she's projecting a little, like, animosity towards Naoto and him, especially looking so much like that. Like, maybe there's levels and layers to that too, or maybe it's not going down that weird route. We'll see. But when it's all said and done, like, Susie's like, hey, I'm gonna stay here. He's like, no, just go to school, I'll be fine. Like, you need to go to school, and Because once again, it's like she's afraid of being abandoned, and once again, I don't know if that stems from the family stuff of like being booted from one place to another, and it just finally like it started chipping away at her just like it did Naoto. But yeah, he falls asleep and wakes up, and of course Suzuki is like, "Oh yeah, I found my way into the house through the garden." It's like, Jesus Christ. It's like, yeah, like you've been sleeping for a while. We only had morning classes, so I didn't really. I mean, I kind of skipped, but it's like I tried waking you up and all those things I did to him. He's like, "What did you do to me while I was asleep?" But she's like, "Yeah, I'm here to make sure you're okay." But then Yukari comes over, and now it's like, oh, she wants to cook for you and check up on you, and now it's like, oh, he's like, oh man, I don't want her to misinterpret things. He's like, well, first and foremost, I'm in my pajamas. I didn't take a bath last night. I don't want her to see me like this, but also Suzuki's here. Like, so what do I do? And he's telling her, like, to go. Well, he's freaking out. And she's like, I'll go home. And he's almost like, huh? He's like, I didn't even have to really say anything. But it's like, well, obviously, like, you got so excited when Yukari got here. So I'm going to go home. She's like, or I could stay it, not unless you're kind of nervous around being alone with Yukari and you need me to be your buffer friend. And she's kind of being coy and teasing him, and now he has to hide her under his covers just to like, it's like, well, I had nowhere else to stash you, had to like quickly do that while Yukari brought in like the rice porridge or whatever she made for me. So it's like, cool, caught in this awkward situation with like whatever Suzuki's situation is, and I like Yukari and I don't want her to get the wrong impression about this, but like Satsuki is, doing what she can, not to try and make his life miserable or anything like that, but she's trying to get back in his good graces slowly but surely, and like trying to fix whatever relationship they had and blossom it into whatever she wants it to be. And that's, I think, for them to be something more, but we don't fully know her motives behind everything that she's doing, because like I said, it could just be a setup of like, I want to make sure like I like you and I want to take care of you, but also like if we don't end up together, it sucks, but I'm fine with it. I just want you to be in a good place in life, and I want us to be in a better place, whether that ends up being romantically, which I'm hoping it does, or whether it's just I'm putting you in a position to put yourself first because you haven't for so long, for altruistic reasons, but also on some levels of it's a defense mechanism to protect yourself from getting hurt. So yeah, it's there's a lot there that and I'm throwing a lot of like, you can make the argument maybe I'm throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall, as I've often say. So I'm curious to see whether there's any validity or to like some of the perspective I've kind of thrown out there, and see where the story ends up going forward in the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.